All right. So with that said, let's jump right into a webinar. So, like I said, I have a few questions that were submitted to us, and I'm going to ask you guys. So, Maro, I have a first question goes for you. So, how do you determine when to seal coat versus fully resurface?
So that's probably one of the hardest questions I think any HOA board member or property manager has to deal with. And, there really isn't I would say a black and white answer. It is, you really need to keep an eye on the surface itself. If the surface is extremely rough, a lot of surface cracking, and if the thickness of the asphalt has diminished over time. And what I mean by that, if you look at asphalt, this is asphalt, that's a core, that's how it starts out, correct? But asphalt wears from the top down. As it gets older, this starts to wear down from an inch and a half, let's say that was originally there, to about a quarter of an inch. When you got a quarter of an inch, seal coating isn't the answer, but you're not going to be able to know that unless you've done some assessments first. So the quick answer is going to be assess it, look at it, look at the condition of it. If it's too rough, if it's got too much aggregate showing, if it's really cracked up, you definitely want to take a look at resurfacing. And if it does look okay, get somebody to do what's called a core sample will give you the thickness of what's there. And like I said, if you've got a quarter inch of asphalt there, seal coating isn't going to do much for it.
And I guess the best answer be at the end of the day, would be actually bringing an expert to
Yep.
do an assessment, and will tell you, right? Um, so Alec, with that said, why do you think integrating an engineer early in the paving and site work projects? Why is that so important?
I think it's important to always engage a professional, ultimately because we can play a true third party point of view of projects. We're not involved in any board dynamics. We're not involved from a commission standpoint, like material, like manufacturer reps or other other people in the industry. We're truly third party. We're licensed. We have our priority is similar to doctors. We take an oath to protect the public health and life safety. So you're going to get you know you're going to get the perspective from a professional engineer or any other licensed professional and what's needed to keep people safe, what's needed to protect your property from further damage and more costlier repairs long term. So that's kind of, yeah, I think when it comes to liability and just being good neighbors in our communities, since we're focusing on, like, our focus is on safety, you're not, you do have options a lot of times for full repairs versus minor repairs. And ultimately, an engineer can help you determine what magnitude of the project needs to be done to keep people safe.
Can I add to
That,
that?
of course.
That was great, Alec, and I think he hit it right on the head. For us contractors, we would rather have an engineer or a third party that's watching the project from an unbiased perspective, because at the end of the job, when the project is complete and there's a seal of approval of the project, there's really no question whether we've done the right thing or not. And what you typically see a lot of times is there is no engineer involved in a project, and then after the project is complete, there's some questions and some doubts of what was performed. Then they get an engineer involved to come out and look at it and see what's wrong with the project. So it's kind of like backwards. So I think what Alex said was spot on.
Yeah, and also with municipalities here in Florida for multi-family buildings, the city and its inspectors or the building department, they generally come out to the project maybe once
Yeah.
during mobilization, maybe once during construction, maybe not, and they generally come for a final walkthrough. So having somebody, engage in your project during construction to answer these questions or document the project. That way, when the city comes for their final inspection, they're not identifying things that you have to go back and fix. You can identify them throughout the project and reduce change order costs, and ultimately also, that the city will, you know, if they may not need to do a final inspection if they can get a sign off letter with field reports, because they're that engineer's taking on that role. we also offer that with our special inspection services, kind of delegate those city designs in a project.
Yeah. Um, good point, Alex. So speaking about projects, obviously, my prior life, I was a property manager for a very long time, and I, have my share of projects under my belt. And one of the biggest pain points that board members and property managers have to face is the duration of the project. So, Maro, let me ask you, and Alex can probably chime in on this as well. So, how long do paving projects typically take, and how do you reduce the disruption to the residents?
Um, I'll start. So there's, again, no real answer to this, depending on the size of the HOA
course.
or the condo association. Typically, I mean, on a smaller scale, you can do an HOA, 1 or 2 days, depending on the scope. And then on a larger scale, like some of our larger projects that we've done can take up to 2 months, right? Like some of the HOAs we've done, which are multiple HOAs within an HOA. So the size of it is going to dictate how long it is, but our most of the time, a week or less on the size of what we do is typically what you're going to find. Um, how do we reduce disruption? I mean, that's a team effort. When we go into this project, our success in disrupting, or our success in at really doing things in a way that's not going to impact the HOA is a big team effort with the HOA. They have to be on board. And, once we have a great plan, a phasing plan, a sequence plan, and everything in place that we have approved with the HOA, and sometimes do let's call it a town hall with the residents to let them know all these things that can happen, meetings after meetings, and over communicating the schedule and what you're going to do. That's how you're going to reduce the disruption. Now, it's still going to be a disruption. You have to remember, when we are paving or seal coating a project, it is going to be a disruption. And I'm very adamant in being upfront with customers, but how much of a disruption really is up to the HOA and us in coming up with the right plan. And I'll give you an example. Let's say there's an HOA that it would take us 2 days to seal coat, because they've got cars that they got to move around. But if they can park off site for a night, we're only there for 1 day, less disruption, right? So we've seen a bunch of different ways of doing it, but it's definitely communication, communication, communication. That's what it comes down to.
That's definitely, coming from a property manager point of view, communicating with your residents, I think that's the best part, so they know what to expect,
Yeah.
and on how to avoid those little hurdles that can come eventually with disrupting parking and whatnot. Alex, this one goes to you. So um this one goes hand in hand with kind of like the new regulations that are going on. So what is the linkage between paving and milestones for certification compliance? How do you see the link between the two?
I see the link between it. Well, so I my kind of expertise is waterproofing. And a lot of um mean while a lot of like the photo right now you're showing an at grade paving lot, so there's no occupied space below it. However, in some of like the tragedies really like that triggered a lot of these legislations, specifically Surfside, that issue wasn't, it was you know, issue poor maintenance of and deferring projects related to a parking garage. And you can go down into the report of like all the details of what happened, but ultimately these areas, which typically aren't meant to look pretty, they're meant to serve a use, they generally tend to get kind of put on the back burner of HOA's priorities because it doesn't need to look nice. It doesn't really serve a aesthetic or as we say, like a retail value where it's your views and that Instagram or photo for your building's website that, you know, is what sells units. But by not maintaining things, especially if it is a parking garage or other things, protecting them from future leaks and site drainage, especially like just protecting your parking garage, your parking lot, and maintaining it so it doesn't cause other issues that can spill over into other common areas long term. That's kind of what I think. And but to be more specific, like ultimately a lot of the different recertifications and legislations, the language that's being used is, you know, anything that's any systems that are over a certain dollar amount, so or connected specifically against your structure. So if you have a parking lot or that, you know, butts up against to your building structure, it can be looped into some of these legislation requirements.
Okay. So you were just talking about obviously, you know, maintenance and the importance of keeping up, you know, with your parking garage. So Mauro, this one goes for you. So how critical, sorry, so or how common, sorry, what are the common oversights in preparation for that, you know, shortened paving life? Like, what are those preparations that you should take in consideration?
So, I mean, depending on where you're starting from, if you're starting from the beginning of a paving project, which most HOA and condo associations will not be in that at the beginning of it. But when you're starting a pavement project, the way it's designed, right? If the base is not substantial enough to to carry the loads that are going to be on that parking lot or on that roadway, you will have premature failure of that roadway or parking lot. If the asphalt thickness is not enough to, same thing, to give you that structural number to be able to carry the loads of whatever that parking lot is at the beginning of the drain of the design, that parking lot will fail prematurely. Now, it's not going to fail. It probably won't fail right away, but it won't last its 20, 25 years. It will definitely, fail prematurely. You know, in preparation of, let's say you already have an existing parking lot and an HOA wants to do some work and do some resurfacing or asphalt. Not giving enough time for that asphalt to cure is very important. You know, you have to make sure that you're letting your contractor work and that asphalt curing enough to be able to support loads on it again. And just making sure that you're taking all the precautions with contractors on the site, you know, garbage trucks, pool contractors, landscape contractors, and all of that stuff, that when you do pave it, they are staying very careful and vigilant not to damage it with either chemicals, you know, or equipment. So, you know, I think it starts from the design. If you don't design it correctly with all of the structural loads that you're going to have on it, it will fail prematurely. And I believe if you don't do all your due diligence with everybody on site during the project, letting it get rolled and cured out for at least a day, and then, making sure nobody damages after it with chemicals or overloading or anything like that. I think those are ways that you can the oversights for that.
Yeah. And I have also another question for you, Mauro. Alec was talking about, you know, legislation and compliance earlier. But you know, during a paving project, how do you ensure ADA compliance?
So, couple of things. So if you're asking how do you assure ADA compliance, that you're going to keep ADA compliance during a paving project, well, twofold. So number one, when you do an inspection of the property, you want to make sure that the property is ADA compliant, correct? So if
Right.
we're doing a shopping center, and let's say you've got a handicap stall that is at more than 2% slope, you want to make sure that in your paving project, you're going to account for that and you're going to bring it up to less than 2% in every direction. The other thing you want to make sure of is when you are paving, that you are allowing all of your crew and everybody that's there to be aware that you have handicap accessibility, not only at the building, But remember, a lot of properties that you might deal with that have public right-of-way access from the public sidewalk has to have a ADA access all the way to the building. So it's all about the planning, and it's all about making sure that everybody's aware what ADA compliance is there now, what needs to be redone, what needs to be focused on, and making sure that everybody understands that you have to keep ADA open to the public while you're working.
Correct, because that's, people still need to pass by, you have, wheelchair, you still need to be able to move through your community while the, the work is still, being done. Alex, this one, is for you. And it goes also back to, the whole planning and project. So how do engineers tie that technical data into long-term reserve planning? Because, you have a project and you're gonna have to do your paving. Sometimes maybe you did it a few years, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, but it's gonna be another 10, 15 years that you're gonna have to do it. So how do that, you tie all that data into that long-term reserve planning, so the boards can properly prepare for, all these projects that they have to do, in the parking lots.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, we have, like at Socotec, we have a pretty, since when we do restoration work, we're getting bids from contractors constantly. And our owner's project management team does bid leveling for associations when they're kind of managing these projects. So we're able to use kind of live or recent data where we're actually seeing costs being proposed from contractors on active projects, and we're able to kind of use, we have projects of different sizes, different complexities. I did a roof replacement on Fisher Island in 2023, several of them, and getting materials over on a ferry has a much different complexity than like a project like in the photo you're seeing that has a lot of space for the contractor to mobilize and set up. So by comparing recent past projects, we're able to kind of say, hey, this is what the industry or the average, obviously some contractors are more expensive than others, but we're able to take that that unit price, those square foot prices, those linear feet prices that we're seeing the industry submit on projects, and able to tell associations, well, this is currently what we're seeing. And then the different tools we use, we're able to kind of forecast with inflation, this is what this project may cost you in 5-10 years or from now. And so yeah, that's what I would.
Yeah. Mario, speaking of, so how can, a paving project be phased to align with, this budget cycles? Can it be phased?
What do you mean?
A
So-
paving project, can they
So you
phase a
can.
paving
I mean,
project?
we've done that before. There's been associations that have limited budgets, obviously, and we've done, condo associations. Mostly where you're going to find a lot of this is in condo associations where there's different buildings and it's easy to phase it. So we have phased condo in different phases during a year. Let's say, so first quarter we could do one part of it, second quarter we could do another part, and this is all based on the HOA's needs for how much budgets they have. We've also done half an association on one year and half on the other year, but typically you want to make sure that the phasing is looks right. You don't want to cut a phase in the middle of a
Of
road.
course.
You want to make sure that it's you're able to phase it where it's not going to cause, let's call it premature wear and tear of part of what you just did, plus any safety concerns, anything like that. But yes, you can phase it over budget cycles, and I'm glad Alex said that, reaching out, because a lot of times some budgets are put out in HOAs that I've seen or boards not really realistic, right? Not very realistic budgets, and they don't take into consideration a lot of the things that probably an engineer would take or a contractor would take. So I'm glad that he said that, they do that based on contractor recommendations, contractor pricing. And then the inflation part of it is also very tricky at this point in time. And if you've seen over the last 5 years how bad it's been, number one, when you had COVID, when we had the supply chain get disrupted, it wasn't about inflation, it was about supply chain. And for
Yeah.
us paving contractors, everybody was always worried about the oil price to affect our asphalt cost, right? Well, about 3 years ago, it wasn't the oil, it was the aggregate. The actual aggregate was so expensive to bring into the plants that the price of asphalt rose significantly, but it wasn't about the oil price. It was about the price of the rock, the aggregate. So, yeah, it's possible to phase a project for budgets. Yes.
That's yeah, because I know some of the issues sometimes is unfortunately the budget. And sometimes it's not even the budget. Sometimes it's about timing of the year, whether
So, and I'm sorry, Sully, can I just add to something? I'm
of
sorry to cut
course.
you off. Something that I would say, it's better not to do it that way if possible, if you possibly can do it, because if you phase it out into multiple sections, you have different warranty, different maintenance needs at different times. And that can become a little bit of a headache to look forward to, right? And it's really, I wouldn't recommend it, but you also have to make sure that you understand you're going to have different warranties and maintenance schedules on all of it.
That was going to be something else I was going to mention and ask you, because obviously warranties are going to vary, because from the time you start the first phase, that by the time you finish the last phase, warranties are not going to be the same, especially if you take several months or maybe a year or so. There's going to be a gap in warranty. So I was going to ask you, so what warranty or maintenance plan should board members demand or request, when engaging on a paving project? What type of warranty should they be looking for, or maintenance plans?
So 150% you should ask for what a maintenance plan would look like for your HOA. Especially if you're repaving. If you're repaving, resurfacing, you should realistically look at what you're gonna have to budget based on a contractor's recommendation. You could also get an engineering recommendation as well if there's an engineer involved. Because there's really different ways of maintaining asphalt, and there's two schools of it, right? There's a school of people that don't believe seal coating does anything for a parking lot, and there's a school that says seal coating does. So depending on what the outlook is and what the HOA wants, whether it's maintenance for maintenance purposes or aesthetics, right? Because when you seal coat a parking lot, it makes it black, it makes it look nice. So asking that question when you do a resurfacing project, I think is invaluable to you guys as board members or property managers to know whether you do it or not, what you're going to have to budget over the next 10, 15 years. You can make it so much easier for yourself and the incoming boards as they change to know that there's a budget. Now, whatever you wish to do with that information, entirely up to you, but you won't get caught at the end trying to put your hand in a piggy bank that there's no money in, right? So it's very important that you do at least understand what those costs are over the next 5, 10, even 15 years. Whether you decide to do anything with that information or not, it makes you a much stronger and more responsible board member and property manager.
Okay. So I know we said the Q&As, we're going to leave them for last, but this is a very good question, and I want to hear both of you point of view on this one. Says I have been advised that asphalt sealing reduces the life of paving. So what are your thoughts on that?
Alex, I'll start. So
Okay.
I'm a proponent of seal coating. I think you've got different schools of seal coating. Now, I will tell you this. I am a proponent of seal coat if it's done at the right time. And I stress this, if it's done at the right time. If you pave a parking lot today, and let's say we do 1 inch of asphalt, which is probably a little bit less than this. This is about an inch, a little bit more than an inch. So you do this, you put this down, you repave your parking lot with 1 inch of asphalt, and what you have to do, you have to understand that for this asphalt to cure, all of the oils that are in this asphalt have to reach the surface and then evaporate. Then the asphalt will harden over time. Typically, it can take 7, 8, 9 months, depending on the climate, the traffic, and everything else, for that whole section of asphalt to cure. So when people say that it will, if you seal coat it too early, you're absolutely hurting the life of the asphalt. If you seal coat it too late, the seal coat's not going to work anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe that if it's done at the right time, there is a benefit and a quality of maintenance that's going to provide that asphalt. Because what I talk about all the time is, if you're looking at a road, if you're looking at I-95 or anything like, oh, they don't seal coat because they're going to wait for it to wear off and they're going to repave it again. But you as an HOA, you've inherited a parking lot. It's only an inch of asphalt there. You've got cars, contractors, everybody parking on it. You've got oil spills, chemical spills. You've got water. You've got the sun. It oxidizes that asphalt and it makes it more brittle. Why not protect it? And that's what seal coat does. But they are right. If you do it wrong, which is too early or too often, you can hurt the longevity of your asphalt.
Okay, so so there's basically like a sweet spot that you have in order
I
to do
believe that
it.
there is. I believe you do it a year after you put down new asphalt, and then every 3 to 5 years, depending on what the HOA or the property owner wants to do. If they're more aesthetically, let's call it conscious, you might do it more often because they want that black parking lot or that black roadway. If they're less and they're more maintenance, you might have 3 to 5 years. And again, not too much, because if you put too much down, you can crack your asphalt.
Alec, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, what I just heard is what Mauro just said is every 3 to 5 years. What my thing is with seal coating and maintenance is, sometimes like what has been the maintenance history. Obviously with HOA boards generally cycling out or not keeping documentation from past projects well. I think all maintenance projects need to be frequent. They need to be, if you're, if there was a time where you were seal coating every 3 to 5 years, but maybe there was one board that forgot about it, and then now we want to go back and seal coat something that went on too long, and it may require a replacement. So I just think it's that frequency and creating some sort of continuity between over the life cycle of a building is the importance. Because once you have a board that defers maintenance or kind of drops off or has different priorities, and they may only care about aesthetic things in the lobby and delay other projects, that's when I think is when you get in these kind of gray areas with recommendations, because every building's different. And also, if we don't know what was done in the past, it can make those kind of maintenance plans a lot difficult to continue because of the lack of documentation and knowledge about when things were done and were they done correctly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as an engineer, Alex, so what early warning signs of a structural issues should these board members be looking for? When they go, like you said, so there could be, like I said, a few years that they didn't seal code, because prior board members, prior boards didn't do it, or whatever the case may be. Maybe they didn't have the funds, or or they deferred to the next board. So now a new board comes in, and obviously they want to take care of their asphalt on the parking lot. So what signs of a structural issues they could see, they should be looking for to see whether, okay, should we seal coat or should we repave? So what are those signs that they should be aware of?
I would say from a parking lot perspective, again, I'm not really my background's not so much in structures, but I would say if you have a parking garage, that's when you definitely can have your eye out for structural deterioration. generally in parking garages, you'll see efflorescence, which is like a crystal white, it's calcium
Yeah, it's true.
crystals. So when you start to see that efflorescence, those crystal droppings or crystallization coming out of concrete or coming out of joints, coming out of crack, that generally means there's water kind of somewhere. And where it's not supposed to be. So identifying efflorescence can help you find leaks. Just corrosion and rust, if you're seeing, or also spalling concrete is a pretty big obvious one. For asphalt lots that are at grade, I would just be more observant of tripping hazards. That's generally what I think. Once you start getting into the realm where you can there's deterioration and cracking where someone can trip and fall is generally when that's when a repair needs to be done, or can cause systematic issues, especially as the cracks or potholes get larger. And we're in Florida, we have a lot of rain, a lot of heat and UV exposure, which can also accelerate deterioration.
Can I add?
Of course.
So, yeah, absolutely what Alex just said. One thing that I like to always tell board members is cracking is not always in parking lots and roadways. Asphalt will crack. You will see some cracking in asphalt. Some of it reflects from the bottom, from the surface below it. You definitely want to keep an eye out for anything like depressions, any depressions in the asphalt surface, which means something below the asphalt starting to give way, and very confined cracks. If you see a lot of cracks in one area, that could be an issue. But if you see a crack running in your asphalt, could or could not be a problem. Keep an eye on it. But confined cracks in one area definitely means something's going on below it. When it comes to parking garages, spot on, Alex. You look for those things. But remember, this asphalt doesn't matter. I can make this asphalt stronger than this thick asphalt here, depending on the base I put below them. So it's all about what's below the surface for asphalt. That's the name of this, beyond the surface, right? So no matter what thickness of asphalt I have, if that base is compromised, it will not last. So keep an eye on that base. And how do you do that? Look for depressions in the asphalt, uneven surfaces in the asphalt. You've all ridden on a road sometimes that kind of a little wavy. There's something going on below the surface. Usually the base has become a little compromised over time. And like Alex said, here in South Florida, below the surface, what do we have? Water, constantly moving, constantly moving, constantly moving. That's going to deteriorate the subbase at some point somewhere. So,
All right. So I want to take a moment now, and I have a few more questions still to go through, but I want to take a moment now and go through some polls and see if we have let's see how engaged our attendees. So let's see. Okay. Let's see. So the first question that we have, okay, is has your community, let's see, has your association completely, wait, let me see, give me 1 second. All right, so first let's take a quick poll to see what are we dealing with, who are our attendees, see what kind of community do you live in, whether it's an HOA or condo or a co-op. So it's gonna launch that question, and I'm gonna allow our panel, our attendees to reply. Let's give it out just about a minute to see what kind of communities we have in today joining us. Wow, we do have we have a good mix. Mostly condos, but we have quite a bit of HOAs as well. So it's we have a nice mix of both. Okay. I see that we have mostly condos, but we have a nice size of HOAs attendees today. So guess I say so. All right, these are the results. We have quite a bit of condo attendees today. All right, so let's see. I prepared a few questions. So let's see. Okay, I'll get to the questions later as it's not popping up the rest of them for me. So let's go ahead and do it later. All right, so let's continue with a couple more questions that I have for you guys, and then we'll proceed for the Q&A because we do have a few on the Q&As. So I did have a question that this actually came from me. So because I have heard this before. So what climate specific materials or methods are most durable, when it comes to paving that you have used, Mauro, or that you have seen that are more common or better?
I'm sorry, repeat it again?
Yeah, so what climate specific or, materials or methods are most durable?
For paving, you're gonna look at mixed designs, right?
Okay.
That's typically what we're looking at if you're looking at a paving project is the design of the asphalt mix. And what I mean by that, what is asphalt pavement? Asphalt pavement is aggregate with a binder. Aggregate, it's rocks, sand, anything. You'll see it all. If you can see that, all those rocks, and then if you notice, some mixes have bigger rocks than the others, right? So you'll see these two that are on top of each other. This has bigger aggregates than this. So realistically, it's matching the right mix design for the project itself. And what we have found is, most of the asphalt down here is equal when it comes to roadways and condo associations, but it's definitely an SP super pave asphalt, SP 9.5 asphalt, or an S3 asphalt is what we found is what typically is best for our climates and the wear and tear. The other important part of it, I could give you the best asphalt, but if I don't put the right thickness down, it's not going to do it justice. It's not going to have the right structural number. It's not going to be giving you the thickness that you need for it to, again, like I said, asphalt's going to wear from the top down. As this becomes brittle from the sunlight, this will wear from the top down. So thickness is very important when it comes to asphalt. So.
Yeah. Now, Alex, let me ask you, how often do you think an engineer should bring a community, should bring an engineer beyond inspections, beyond your typical Sears milestones? So beyond that, how often do you think they need to bring an engineer just to do a simple, assessment of the community?
Depends on the age of the building. It depends. Well, I would say one, if you see something, say something. If something doesn't look right, generally it's better to get an engineer to look at it, even if it's just a quick 1 or 2 hour visit. That way you can kind of know where to start. And that's generally what I've noticed too, is like a lot of people don't know where to start. They don't know who to call. So when people don't know what to do, they generally don't do anything and delay. So it depends on the system, but I would say, I mean, now if you're having serious drainage issues, that's kind of a thing that I would say people are calling more frequently, in difference from the required legislative inspections, because they have a problem in front of them that they're looking to solve. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely. I know people typically wait until they have a problem, right? To
Mhm.
call. It's like you go to the doctor when you feel bad, but sometimes you need to go to the doctor just to make sure that everything is right. It's like,
Right. And
yeah, you should. Go ahead.
another thing that I think is good is, that I think more properties should do is, you know, in advance, like if your 40-year recertification is coming up, you know, and instead of wait till that letter shows up from the municipality that comes on your door, maybe reaching out to a design firm earlier and say, hey, we have this this 40-year recertification coming up, or we have, you know, we're aware of these things, but maybe can we guys, can someone from your firm come do a walkthrough with us, to do just a typical property condition assessment or a limited property condition assessment where you're specifically telling them we only want you to look at one specific system, that, and kind of give us some recommendations on what we can do now. So when those city letters start to show up on your front door requiring it to be done, you can kind of be ahead of the game and kind of have some work done to pretty much, you know, prevent yourself from being required to do it. And in a way, you can show up to that inspection with knowing that you're going to get a pass.
All right. Thank you, Alex. So let's go to the Q&A. We have some questions. So Corinne asks, when you need to resurface an old lot, how deep do you need to dig to start a fresh asphalt surface?
Okay, that's a great question. So the answer is that it depends. Number one, it depends on how much asphalt you have there now. It also depends on the condition of the asphalt, correct? Let me give you a for instance. If you have a lot of asphalt, let's say like this, you've got 3 inches of asphalt and you have a lot of surface cracking happening on the top, on the surface. A lot of times milling an inch off or a part of the asphalt surface that you have there off will allow you to get to a surface that's less cracked and more better suited to be overlaid with asphalt. Because remember, I did say something earlier on about cracking. There is such a thing called reflective cracking. And if you can see this core right here that I have, if you have a crack of that size, which is less than a 1/4 inch, and you put an inch of asphalt on top of this, over time, that crack will reflect through. It's called reflective cracking. So trying to minimize the cracks that are on the surface now through milling is very important. But to try to answer your question, you know, here in South Florida, we start off with so little asphalt from the beginning. A lot of times, most HOAs are built with 1.5 inches of asphalt. I know now we're building them with 2 inches. But if they wait 15 years, you know, those 2 inches could be 1.5 inches. And if you're going to remove some of that asphalt surface, you're only removing 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, leaving you with a small little asphalt surface. So my answer is always to an HOA, we want to try to remove as much as we can, but not so much that we get into the rock base. We want to leave that rock base intact. It's been there for 20 years. As long as it's been undisturbed and it's still in good condition, and you can tell by the way your parking lot or roadway looks, you want to take as much asphalt as you possibly can, but leave enough that you're not getting into the rock and disturbing the rock base, because that rock base has been there for so long, you don't want to disturb it. And there's extra cost, which could be significant if you start getting into the rock. So the answer is as much as you can, but not too much. And typically here in South Florida, what we see is mill up to 1 inch of asphalt and then repave with at least 1 inch, sometimes 1.5 inches, depending on what you do. But again, if we start to get into the rock as a contractor, if we say we're going to mill up to 1 inch and we start to hit rock at 1 inch, we may decide to bring up the mill and give you 3/4 of an inch of milling to leave some asphalt there and not disturb the rock. That's really what the key here is. It's a trick. It's really a dance that you're doing with the milling machine and the asphalt. You're trying to make sure that you don't get into the asphalt, but you're taking as much asphalt as possible out. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good question. That's a very good answer to the question. Corinne also asked that if you're in the ocean or in the coastal, do you use thicker material or do you still use the same?
I would tell you that I would use, you know, the asphalt itself is not as important as the base, but since you're not redoing the base, going thicker on the asphalt is going to give you more longevity and a better structural number. I believe that the base is more important out there because of the proximity to water, the proximity to tidal surges, up and down movement of water. I think base material there is more important than asphalt. But again, you're in a building, you're not going to get into the base. So yeah, going a little bit thicker instead of an inch, maybe an inch and a half, will give you a better longevity. Number one of the worst things for asphalt is UV rays. UV rays are constantly beating up asphalt. That's why it starts out black and it ends up kind of like a whitish gray, because those UV rays are constantly oxidizing that asphalt. So yeah, I think going a little bit thicker on the ocean, there is some benefit to that.
All right, thank you. And all right, we have one more question before we leave. So Steve asked, what is the best way to begin an asphalt renewal process? I think we touched a little bit on that, but maybe you can just give him some tips. What is the best way to begin an asphalt renewal process?
Well, I think number one. Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously you need to get an assessment done or have it reviewed, and determine what the scope of work is, what's the budget, and what's the building schedule. But ultimately, I think the best way is you need to get, and then having a fair bidding process as well. A lot of properties, boards, you name it, everyone on like the owner side, they tend to have, oh, use my cousin's company, or oh, this is just the company that's always done things for a building, so let's just use them. But I think having a fair bidding process where you're getting at least 3 bidders involved, and that all 3 bidders are invited to a pre-bid meeting at the property. That way they can all ask questions. They can all provide information about their bid, and that also things that may have not been included in the bid generally will come up in those meetings, with site protection, other coordination issues. I would say that my biggest thing is, without that site protection being clearly defined, a lot of owners think that, oh, that, it's up to them to protect cars, it's up to them to protect the property. At the end of the day, site protection is a cost and a project, and if it's clearly defined that you want all of your other areas covered with plywood, it needs to be clearly defined, so that's not a change order once owners start to complain later on. So I would say, yeah, engage with an owner's rep or a property management that has experience doing these projects and can give you a fair bidding process.
I think, Alex, you hit something on the head about the bidding process and a fair bidding process. And one of the cautionary tales I'd like to tell every board member or HOA, too many people are looking at pricing and pricing as the one thing that they go for, and, it's important that when you get a guy like, a firm like, Alex firm or a property manager, the biggest, most important part, I believe, in the success of a project starts at the way it's scoped from the beginning. If you scope it correctly with everybody bidding the same quantities, the same materials, same everything, you're going to be able to have a much better process in the bid, and then be able to evaluate it better and make an informed decision to spend your money correctly. What too many people are doing are, falling for, let's call it that sticker price, and not really digging into what is included or not included. And if you ask me and Alex to come out into your property right now and say, give me how many square feet of asphalt repairs you need to do, patching. Let's not talk about overlay. Let's talk patching. We would give you 2 different numbers. His methodology of fixing things and mine aren't the same, probably. And imagine if you get 3 contractors to come out and look at your property, all 3 are going to give you different repair estimates because there isn't a specific quantity. When you get somebody like Alex involved, when you get somebody like a property manager that knows how to scope a project, that's the most important part. That's where it starts because you can be looking at something that's $30,000 cheaper, 30% cheaper, but ends up costing you 40% more because of the underlying, let's call it bait and switch tactics that some people have.
Correct. Yeah, and it just means that probably one of the bidders didn't, just because it's a smaller bid doesn't mean that it's cheaper. It may mean that he just didn't understand the whole extent of the job. He's
Right.
maybe missing something, and maybe the highest bidder is not necessarily the more expensive. It may be including things that you may not need. So that's one of the things that is very important to compare apple to apples when when he was saying that you need to make sure that that you get your right your right bids, your right comparisons. So
Yeah, and Sully, I say it a lot, and I've been saying it a lot over the last year more than any times. Not every HOA and every contractor are going to be a good mix, and sometimes it's better to not to separate. But I've always been a guy that's always said, look, this is what it is. This is, you may not want to hear what you have to do, but this is really what you should be doing. So it's very important that everybody at an HOA comes up with a great scope to be able to know what we're bidding, and that way everybody's bidding on the same numbers. And it makes it so much easier for an HOA that doesn't have the experience in asphalt to be able to quantify it and then compare it if everything is equal. Oh, so
so thank you so much, guys. So we wrap up today's webinar. I just want to give a big thank you to Maro from the Paving Lady, and Alex from Saugatech, and Millie from for her support, and to everyone who joined us. Thank you for investing your time and making your community safer and smarter. And at Casa Group, we're very proud partners in experts like today's panelists. We partner with them on daily basis for projects that we have at our communities. So we make sure that to bring you experts anytime you need them. So we like to bring them to make sure that your project succeed. So we look forward to connecting with you again on our next event. So thank you. If you need any information, here is our information. I will share Alex email. Unfortunately, we have Masi's email here, but you can email Masi as well. But I will share Alex information as well with all of you guys. And here's Maro's email. So you need to reach him for any paving needs. And Masi's email is here. Like I said, I will also be sharing Alex's email. If you need any engineering or project rep, owners rep needs, you can reach out to Saugatech. And for any community needs for your property, you can always reach out to me. We're with Casa Group. We're the premier property management firm in South Florida. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Maro, Alex, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.